Hey everybody, welcome to 3D6 Charge, a podcast about competitive Warhammer 40k, state of the game, and community news. We're streaming live right now at Twitch TV/3D6 Charge. We're live every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, where you can follow and subscribe. We're also anywhere you can find podcasts, such as Spotify or iTunes. And before I get on to the episode intro, if I could ask you guys to
ring the bell, smash the like button. Do it.
Thank you, Kevin, for that clip that I will be using from now on. So anyway, this is episode 25. Merry Sanguinala, or is it Happy Sanguinala? I'm not sure. Sanguinala's blessings then, yeah. So, well, I already named the title like Happy Sanguinala, so we'll go with that. So anyway, joining me tonight are Kevin Lieb, Benjamin Rubenstein, and if his video ever loads, Omar Q. All right. So we don't really have too much community news to talk about. I mean, like, Games Workshop updated the app to finally release the roster editor, as it were. We got some snippets of Death Guard rules, but yeah, I mean, like, it's getting up on the holiday season, and there already weren't a lot of tournaments to begin with, and this time of year it's even fewer. So not too much in terms of meta news to go on, but you guys have thoughts about the app? Do you want to share how the roster editor has worked for you? Have you guys even tried it?
Tried it. Here's my experience. I saw 1 month free, and I went to try it out, just like install it, set up my account. It's just like, what do you mean I have to pay first? Like, what do you mean I have to put all that info in? Like, I'm so let down because it's like a beta. It's a beta, and they're charging for a beta. They're not charging yet, but like they want you to put your cash info in, so they kind of are.
Yeah, they want you to put your money in so you forget about it, and then the next month they get to charge you for it.
Which is what happened to me, actually.
And honestly, I've heard so many horror stories about people trying to unsubscribe and like having to like actually just call customer support to like just be like, hey, I don't want to pay you guys anymore. And then I'm part of several different community pages, and every single one of them is just a laundry list of things that the app does wrong. Points are wrong, things don't fit rosters correctly, things don't load right, certain loadouts cause it to crash. There's like a certain way you can load out an AdMech Data Priest that just like makes the app hard lock. It's great. Like, there's just so much wrong with it. Yeah.
So
it's a mess.
before it's all doom and gloom, I will say this is a step in the right direction. Part of their post that they announced the beta is they're like, hey, we saw that you guys were upset with certain issues with the formatting on things, or certain data were incorrect, and like, here are the ones that we got reported to us, and we've corrected all of them. So they are taking feedback, and that's a good thing.
They have to take feedback. It's a beta. This app was built shoddily from the ground up. I am angry about it. I've worked in companies where we've built apps, where we've done this shit in the past. I wasn't necessarily building, but I was part of the process. I've helped beta test products. The entire situation was a trash fire. We didn't even get an alpha version of the app. We got a very shoddy patchwork thing that shouldn't have seen the light of day.
Yeah, so it'd be fine if they release this and they're like, hey, like, tell us how it works. But the fact that they are just like, you get a month free, and then it's going to cost, like, this isn't going to be good in a month. And I don't want to be in the position where like I'm going to get charged money because I didn't like unsubscribe fast enough.
The weird thing about it being a sub thing too is that, like, as time goes on and more codices are released, your sub actually like gets worse value as an army's rules, like 8th edition rules, become invalid, removed from the app, and then the new rules get paywalled behind, the codex code that you have to input. So what are you actually paying for that sub?
You're paying for the Battleforge.
Maybe if it works in a couple months, I'll think about it.
Well, but it's not. I mean, it's not going to work in a couple months. And the other problem is if their Battleforge work the way it seems to supposed to, where it's like it makes sure your army works. It does all the stratagems for you. If they added a bunch of features like the ITC app with scoring and missions and had an actual Crusade feature, then I'd be like, okay, I'll pay $5 a month to have like, okay, I need to own the rules, but I have access to all this stuff. Fine. But this is just I'm really angry about this, honestly. And the fact that they're asking me to pay for a beta, like, why? If you want to test it on us, like if it was a free beta, I'd be using it. I'd be using it all the time. I would have it replace Battlescribe. I'd use Battlescribe to make sure things worked. But like, I would make it my primary thing and report feedback because it's like, fine. When you start taking my money, I want to have a good product. But no.
Yeah, I'm glad it launched now when we can't really do events, or at least when I can't really do events, because I know there's a lot of games out there right now that have an official army builder app, and they just release all of their points changes and like erratas through that app. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be really miserable for TOs in like, I don't know, 8 months, a year, when, COVID's hopefully under control at that point, vaccines are growing out. Hooray. It's going to be miserable though in a year when there are events and there's going to be, we all know it's going to happen. There'll be like mid to high level tables and someone's army is just going to be doing something totally illegal because the app said it was good and the app is the official thing. So they didn't bother checking it against anything else because maybe you like, and as a TO, like, what do you do? Like when someone's like, oh yeah, like my opponent's army is illegal, and you go to the person and they're like, well, the official GW app told me it was correct.
Well, you're going to see a lot of tournaments saying the official GW app isn't enough.
Right. Which is like that. And then GW is going to throw a fit. Like, hopefully they don't. Hopefully GW recognizes that like their app is just not functioning. But
but the other thing is, I don't think GW can afford to throw a fit. And yeah, they've had a lot of disasters in the past. And yes, this app was a disaster. Not arguing that. But their PR has been pretty on point. And like, that's part of what I do.
I don't see it as being a big issue in like GTs. I see this as like RTTs, you got your 10, 12-man tournament. And like, but like, if everything won, there's just going to be issues with the app just like throwing like your newer players off. And it's just miserable that's going to happen. And when you're like, you got to go to the new player, like, I'm sorry, friend, but like, don't use the GW official product.
No, it's going to be even more awkward than that, where you have someone who's like, kind of fledgling into the game and they're like, I can get this app, I can like build my roster here, and then like you use that, you trust it, and then you get told, oh no, that was wrong. It's like, I spent money on this.
Surprise.
It's not.
Well, the other thing is Warhammer. I'm not as worried about that because Warhammer isn't something people go into lightly. It's an expensive hobby.
Well, it's not paying for like the models in your army. I think Kevin's more talking about like paying for the app, because here's the thing with when somebody makes an army using Battlescribe and then there's like an error in one of the rules or whatever, the attachment's wrong, or there's, it missed a CP, or like a point value is wrong. It's free. It's free and it's upheld by a community of volunteers. So you don't expect it to be right 100% of the time. And if it isn't right, you're not mad that you can't be that mad about it, because you're like, well, somebody else volunteered their own time and effort to do this as a service for me. And I have the rules for myself that I could have checked. I could have done this by hand in Excel like the old days, and this wouldn't have happened. I just wanted to be lazy about it and take the shortcut known as Battlescribe. Now you do that with the GW app, the GW app, first party product. You're paying money for it to be able to access these features. Whoa. So right off the bat, it's not a community of volunteers doing it, and it's not free. So you don't have that excuse. You're paying money for an actual product. You expect the product to work.
My counterpoint to you is, how many rules issues has Battlescribe had?
It doesn't matter. It's free.
A lot.
Well, yes, it's free. What I'm saying is, I don't see that being a problem because our community talks a lot. There are a lot of loud voices in our community. When someone goes to the Warhammer Reddit and they're like, how do I build my army? You're going to have like 30 people like, do not use the GW app.
Right, but a lot of new players don't know about like that they should be using that as a resource. They're just going to see GW official, and they're like, "Ah, that's the one." Because
like,
there's so many. Because a lot of our new players are coming from other games that have official apps by the company that produces the game that are actually excellent or perfect or literally the thing that you use to like build points.
Yeah,
Like,
X-Wing, Warmafords.
X-Wing.
I think Infinity has one.
Like X-Wing, literally.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The way they balance, yeah, literally, there is no like errata. Like this is the points document for X-Wing. They just have an app. Like this is the official app for the game, and the points of the app tell you is the points for your models.
That's it. That's the points. That's the rules. It's in the app.
How it gets updated. And there's a couple games that are like that, and we're gonna have people coming from those games, and they're just gonna see the GW app, and they're gonna be like, "Yep, that's how you do it," and they're not gonna even think to ask someone else because it's official, and that's how it works in other games.
I know that.
Like I'm pretty sure the way it works in X-Wing, and correct me if I'm wrong because I don't play the game, is when you go and you buy a new ship, like you go buy like a Y-wing or whatever, you get the card inside the thing so that you can use it like right then and there. But if there are ever updates to that ship or like the pilot card, it's just in the app. You don't have to like buy fucking X-Wing chapter approved every year.
Yeah,
it's just
they actually
in
don't
the app.
Yeah, they don't even put points on the cards anymore. But they're just like, this is the rules on the card, and they errata those sometimes. But right, if I remember correctly, the points are not on the cards anymore, and they're not on the points. Yeah, okay.
You have to go to the app to get the points.
Yeah,
they actually have a. It's funny. They actually have a power level system, is what they recommend when you're not using those. They have like little cards that says like, if you want to fly Luke, here are the upgrades. This is 3 power level. You're playing a 5 power level game. There you go. Yeah. Otherwise, you have to go through the app and get points and do a more solid list building that way.
Yep. Yeah. Like I feel like I was saying, because right now Warhammer is growing really quickly, and it's not just growing by like just finding random people off the street. It's other gamers are seeing how successful the game is right now and moving to it from other game systems. So because this is a popular thing in other game systems, to have an official app that just actually runs the system, because it's an excellent system. Like imagine in 10 years if this app actually works and we don't need to have chapter approved anymore, and they don't need to like put points in the backs of every book that will be wrong in a couple months anyway, and they can just be like, it's on the app. Like it'll be great. It'll be awesome.
That sounds delightful.
Like, it's beautiful. Yeah. Like I don't play competitive. I've never actually even been to an X-Wing tournament, but like I've played casually quite a few times. And the fact that you just like pull out an app and be like, all right, like here it is. And then you don't have to be like, oh man, do I need to double check it? Is it right? Is it wrong? Like, no. That's the only source. That's
you don't have to carry you don't have to carry literally 5 different books to run your one army. Yeah, that's a big win for X-Wing right there.
It kind of, you say that and it kind of amazes me how popular Warhammer is.
It also means that we don't have to have this like nonsense. We can only change points every 6 months. Like GW could literally just be like, oh man, this army's a problem. Their troops cost 1 more point. Effective tomorrow. We're uploading it to the app.
Warhammer is successful in spite of itself.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate, it is the example of failing forward.
Yep. The other example, and that I'd like to call it, that this app is gonna like bring up, it's like, let's say you have someone who's like, I'm in it for the hobby, and they've been doing hobbying for a while, and they kind of have that like, you know, the person who's kind of like, they're afraid to even get into competitive play because they don't want to be like brought down or anything, or like
Yep.
And then so they're gonna go to their sites like, oh, I can have the app, oh, I can build this sweet list, and they're gonna show up and they're gonna have an illegal list, and someone's gonna like get angry at them for bringing an illegal list, and they're just not gonna want to play competitively anymore. And like they're gonna see these competitive players as the people like shooting them down. It's not going to be them, but it's going to feel that way. It's going to feel like they got really betrayed when they actually tried to go competitive.
Yeah.
It's always a disaster when people have to get like removed from a tournament or like a given like game losses for something that's like not really their fault. Like, oh, like your army was 200 points over. I can't like let you keep this win for obvious reasons. But man, it's really not your fault. And now just everyone gets to feel bad. Your opponent feels bad for having lost to an army that was too big. You feel bad for having the TO tell you that like your army's like illegal and that you don't get this win that you've just played for. The TO feels bad for having to tell a new player that like it's hopefully by the time events come out, this will get fixed. Like, but it's like really important that if this thing comes out of beta, if they're ever like, all right, it's now the official GW app, like, version 1, not in beta, like it needs to work. And man, given the way that they've released other products, like literally every codex that has day one erratas, like they need to get their act together for this app, because it's going to be a real disaster if it launches with just chock full of errors.
Yeah, I think the real crux of this issue is GW's resistance to moving away from their print model of selling rule books. And like I've said it for I think years now, where I said if GW would just let me pay $5-10 a month and I would get all of the rules in perpetuity for forever, like as long as I continue paying that subscription, pay I pay $15 a month, like maybe even 20.
I mean, that's a Netflix subscription.
Yeah, that's a Netflix subscription, but they won't. So I have to buy these books. But then there's like there's this one dude in Russia who's doing Wahapedia, and he has a Patreon and he has all of the rules available on his thing. I'm not going to get the link out in like the chat or anything, but you can Google it easily enough. And he's doing exactly what I said I would pony up money for. So I was like, well, I said I would do it. So now I guess I feel obligated to like toss this Russian dude like $5 a month on Patreon because he's doing exactly what I was looking for in terms of rules. Now, if GW would see that for what it is, not as IP theft or copyright infringement or anything like that, which I mean, yes, it is, but like it's the whole thing of like how Steam and how Netflix and Prime Video and all of that really curbed piracy. It's not because people want to like not pay for things. Yeah, there's always going to be a subset of people that are just going to download PDFs and get the rules for free and or download a game for free or whatever. But when you make things very easy to obtain and use, people are just going to pay for it because it's easier than having to like go on a shady website that ends in .ru, downloading a torrent file and hoping that it's the right one.
Music, I think music's the best example of that. We all pirated music for years. I know I did. And then the minute I came to the States, I was like, what's Spotify? If it's not on Spotify, I either buy the album or I download it anyway. But I don't pirate anymore. I've had a running Spotify subscription for 8 years.
Yeah, it's just like really awkward that the paid version is worse than the not paid version. And you need to fix that because like history has shown over and over that if your thing is better, people will pay for it, especially if you're the original company.
Yeah, the other thing too is like even with the books, it is frustrating to buy a codex knowing that I'm going to get rid of it at some point. Be it in a year, be it in 4. But I mean, the Space Marines Codex I've bought 3 Space Marines Codex in less years.
Just be glad you didn't buy the Psychic Awakening for what was that Dark Angels one? I think that one got obsoleted within 8 months.
Yeah. Like
no, there's still Thousand Suns in it, right?
Yeah, there's still Thousand Suns.
Yeah, there's some factions, but like people buy it for one faction. I think are Space Wolves the shortest one? Didn't like the Space Wolves?
They only like 4 months.
Yeah, Saga of the Beast, and then it got immediately like not retconned, but like just obsoleted.
Right, but like if I bought that because I play Space Wolves, like I had it for like what? Oh goodness, like
almost no actual play time due to COVID.
It was like 4 months of COVID, and then it was done. Like that's a little rough.
And then like so you had your old codex, and then so that was $50 right there, and then you paid $35 for Psychic Awakening, and then 4 months later, both of those are gone, and then it gets replaced with like a 2-page PDF, and then a month later, you get another full price codex. Oh no! You get your full price Space Marines Codex, and then your $35 Space Wolves supplement. Like I'm sure right now that this business model is short term, just printing money for GW. because it's worth more than the entire British fishing industry right now. Just the one company.
That's
But
ridiculous. I didn't know that.
Three times as much.
Yes,
That's insane.
This isn't hyperbole. It's actually worth 3 times as much as the entire British fishing industry, and this is just because, like, on the Warhammer Twitter, just because it's on it's on Warhammer Twitter, people are talking about like how Brexit is being like held up by arguing about like fishing rights, and people are just like, there's one company in Nottingham like just blowing the fishing company out of the water. You like the British Parliament needs to just like kill off fishing and rebrand it into like Age of Fish and just move on.
Primaris fish.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know. I think that there's definitely a way out for the app. Like, there's definitely a world in which the app is great in a couple months, and GW gets the resources that it needs, and it ends up being really great for the game.
Which I can afford.
Actually, a month ago, they posted up a job posting for an Android developer. Not like a team, just one guy to work on, I believe, the 40K app.
So my understanding is they have an entire in-house team that they're bringing up to speed on this. So as much as we've talked about how much they've messed up, you have to remember that like this is their company's like first real in-house attempt at creating an app. The AOS app was outsourced. It wasn't in-house.
Why it was great.
I think it was. So here's the thing. I actually think the AOS app is good because it has a very good free component. If you could look up units in the 40K app, I'd love it. I'd love it.
You can now, though. You got all of the data sheets for free. It just doesn't have the like special rules. You got to pay for those.
Oh, good. Then okay.
That helps.
Yeah, they just added that.
Excellent. Okay, so that's a big win. That like no, because like having a good component that is free means people will have the app downloaded. It's like good for the company, but I also think it's like there's just like a lot to be gained by having this app. Like to an unbelievable extent, it is like this is the way of the future for a lot of these games. Other companies are going here, like it's good they're investing in it. And I'll be honest, I'm a little upset with them like charging for a beta, but like part of me thinks that like, hey, I want this thing, I should be throwing the money. Like you should put your money where you want things to be developed. There's the idea that like, oh, if it's bad, you shouldn't give it money, but like they're still in the development cycle. They are taking feedback. I'm personally going to sorry about that. I'm personally going to start paying for it just because they are listening to feedback. They are making improvements. I want to support them, support this app getting developed. I'm not going to ask other people to do that, but really think about what you're trying to get and where we want this game to be.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, but here I am on the flip side, and I'm thinking like yes, I could show my support and reward them for making strides, but you could also very easily make the argument you shouldn't reward them until there's an end product worth rewarding. Like if you bought something from Forge World that had a huge mold slip or bubble in it, you wouldn't be like, oh, they tried. This was better than what the QC was like 2 years ago. No, you wouldn't extend for that. You would just be like, no, make this right or give me my money back.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm not, and like my thing is, we've seen people put money down for betas in different ways, right? Like pre-order a game or buy X game and get access to Y games beta. Like there are ways to monetize a beta. This just isn't one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
I don't know.
Having early access to a beta is different. Like to a beta game is different than here's an app meant to be used as a resource. It's in beta. Also, give us $5.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
And as you heard me earlier, the approach to it made me kind of have a bitter taste to it, where they had. I think they could have done this without having the bitter taste that it was. but it still doesn't change the fact that I want them to continue to develop this. I want them to know that they have my support in developing it.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, can GW turn this around? Absolutely. I don't know how long you guys have been in the hobby, but I've been around since 3rd edition, and I remember when, store owners didn't know what was being released that week until it just showed up on the order list for that week. Where nobody knew what was coming out when. You just got like rumors of stuff, not even like screenshots, because people didn't have camera phones back then, but just like, hey, I heard that from my uncle whose brother-in-law works at the bar where this GW employee goes to, that they're doing a rule about, I don't know, squigs getting +1 to their saving rolls. That was what was a rumor back in the day. But now, like, anybody who's been around since then knows that just the advent of the Warhammer community site is a huge step in the right direction, and GW's been making huge strides in community engagement. Because I remember there was a time where there was a official like GW forum and Facebook page, and they just shut it down. They shut it down because they just didn't want to deal with anybody talking about anything like positive or negative about the product.
Right, but think about why that community engagement has improved over the years. It's because like they have more community engagement, they're getting more money. It's like companies are like,
I mean, it's also how you keep
my money.
Yeah, but it's also retaining. It becomes a customer retention thing. Like, I heard horror stories.
Right, but
again, listen,
what the secret is? The second that they stop, I stop feeling like they're actually making good improvements. I say, unsubscribe me. This is the reason why you start doing this. I'll subscribe again. And if enough people do that, they'll listen, because it's money speaks. It's
right. That's what happened. But also, so the other thing is, we're talking from a customer retention perspective. Like, I worked in customer success for 2 years. GW is doing it right. They're trying to keep people happy, engaged. Like, everyone who plays Warhammer goes to the Warhammer community website every day, or at least every couple of days.
Yeah.
Like, we're all on it multiple times a week waiting. Now, we get our previews from our game stores. Like, we buy our stuff from wherever. But in the end of the day, the money goes up to GW. Part of that is how they're engaging us. Like, they are doing a good job there. And I've heard the horror stories of what it was like before 8th and in 7th. I started in 8th. I came in and I'm like, this is an easy hobby to get into and understand what's going on.
Holy shit, it was not the case before. It was so fucking opaque.
Yeah.
Like there was nobody there to teach you how to paint. Like, there was, there might be like a little thing on like the back of the box or in like White Dwarf, but like, have you ever seen like that one meme where it's like how to draw an owl? First draw a couple of circles, then step 2, draw the rest of the owl. It used to be like that.
Literally, the painting videos are great because I'll talk to people and I'm like, oh, it must be so hard. I remember I showed an ex-girlfriend because she helped me paint one of my rubric marines, and she was literally like, wait, I just watched this video and follow instructions. Awesome. The rubric marine she painted is better than most of mine. I've got like 30 and 2 of mine are better.
What does that say about you?
We don't talk about that.
Before you move on, I do remember there was this one time that we were talking and you're like, dude, Warhammer got me laid. I showed this girl how to paint a mini and then we had sex afterwards. And I was like, you're a fucking liar. That didn't happen. That's not a real thing that ever happened in the history of anybody ever.
Yeah, he believed me because I showed him the mini she painted and he was like, oh, it's so much better than yours. He's like, no way you painted that.
Oh no.
All right, so last week was Ben's embarrassing Dreadnought story. This week was the model painting one, or it's history story. Who's next? Chris, are you next week?
Embarrassing. If we're having an episode next week, I guess so. I'm actually not sure if we're going to do an episode next episode. Yes.
I actually have a good one for you.
Oh, yes.
A good one about me?
Yeah, and Warhammer.
We can just talk about the one time Chris and I actually played a game against each other in a tournament.
Oh, fuck off, dude.
Oh, God. Benjamin, you are a monster. I remember that game.
That list was monstrous.
All right. So, one of the other things we wanted to talk about this episode.
That list was Kevin's fault, by the way. Kevin dared me to play that list, so I had to. So you can thank him for it.
I did dare him to play that list. I mocked him for.
He mocked me for buying a bunch of a model that I enjoyed, and he's like, "You're never going to play them all." I was like, "Oh yeah."
What model was this?
XV88 broadsides.
Oh God. Oh right.
Literally just rolling a bucket of dice at me every turn. Didn't matter where I was on the board.
Did he bring Mortarion that time?
I did bring Mortarion, and it didn't matter.
There was a Mortarion on the table briefly.
Yeah, he existed for just a brief moment. It was 9 broadsides, all with smart missiles. I had Mortarion, like 60 plague bearers, and like some other stuff. It did not work out well for me.
So, all right, I guess we're telling the story now. So, my perspective, we're at a game store that's unfortunately closed down. And all of a sudden, the owner says, "Ben, hey, your order came in." He pulls out this giant 7 high stack of broadsides and just your order came in. Boom. I'm like, "Ben, how could you possibly use all those broadsides?" It's like, "Oh, I will." 3 months later, I bring up that event again to him. He's like, "You know what, Kevin? I'm bringing it to the next tournament I go to." You're welcome for the buckets. You're welcome.
You're both horrible people.
Yeah, so I ran it. I won that event. I ran it in a couple events. It felt pretty good for most of it, and then the meta shifted a bit, and it became less interesting to play things that could get tagged and be useless. I'm really hoping that they come back. Like we were saying with the I have high hopes for railguns with the new Mortal Moon rules coming out of Forge Worlds. I'm looking forward to putting them back on the table, maybe with railguns this time, because I love railguns. All about them.
All right. So, once again, new attempt at transitioning topics.
Oh yeah.
So we finally, hey Chris, we know what DR does.
Yes.
Disaster Resilient does.
Yes.
What do you think?
I hate it.
What does it do?
I hate it a lot. So there were a bunch of rumors of when, starting out a few weeks ago where people were thinking, oh, what is Disgustingly Resilient going to do? Bunch of people, thinking oh, it's going to stay the same. It's just be a 5-up feel no pain. But the first rumor that came out is just going to be, hey, it's going to be a flat -1 damage to everything to a minimum of 1 damage. And everyone was like, no, that's too dumb. That's not going to be the thing. GW wouldn't just take the easy way out with that. That's just lazy rules writing. Apparently all of us just giving GW way more credit than, they deserve. So yeah, the preview came out.
Why do you think that's lazy rule writing? Lazy rules writing.
All right, so maybe lazy rules writing isn't the right word, but but that's trending in the way of oversimplifying rules and speeding the game up, which changing it to for lack of a better word, a duty eternal rule. It does speed up the game, and it does make it easier to understand, because the first time you tried to teach somebody what a feel no pain does, it can be a little complicated, the first time. And then there's all the slow rolling, and then if there's a D3 damage weapon against a 1 or 2 wound guy, then what would normally be 30 seconds of rolling dice is now 5 minutes of them just rolling 1 die, and then you rolling 1 to 3 dice, and then maybe your guy dies. It's a whole
so
thing.
Far what we're hearing is that you love the new rule because it's way better than the old one.
So I like and dislike the new rule of it being -1 damage to a minimum of 1. I dislike it on the basis of it makes regular infantry more susceptible to 1 damage weapons now, which for things that are supposed to be super tough, it doesn't feel good. It just doesn't it doesn't feel right. So I did the math on it, and it went like a bolter went from needing like 10 shots to take off 1 wound on average to needing 6 shots to take off a wound, because at -1 damage, well, doesn't matter. It's going to do the same amount of damage no matter what. Whereas before you had that 1 in 3 chance of just ignoring the shot altogether. But what that didn't take into account was these Plague Marines now have 2 wounds at -1 damage instead of 1 wound at 5 up, feel no pain. And I think a lot of the initial outcry about it, mine included, was that people were comparing the 2 wound -1 damage guy to the guy that never existed, the guy that had 2 wounds and a 5 up, feel no pain, which in theory is, out of all 3 of those variations, is the best one. It's very clearly the best one because you have 3 effective wounds after the feel no pain. You know, you have increased resistance. You're super tanky against 1 damage weapons. You know, you're tanking 2 damage shots very easily, and you know, but you're comparing it to something that like never existed. It's like when like you like start dating a new girl and then like you're upset because she's not as hot as this girl that you've never dated before or didn't even exist, this hypothetical like perfect 10 in your mind. What are you getting mad about? That person never existed. You're ignoring, you know, what's in front of you right now in comparison to what was before. I'm assuming like your ex-girlfriend was a terrible person and you broke up with her, not the other way around because you're a bad person. Yeah,
it's a very strange analogy. I do agree with you though, where I think that there's a lot of people comparing this rule to something that just doesn't exist. No matter how you do the math, you just like the new Marine is so much tankier than the old one because he has a second wound.
Yes, the second wound changes everything.
Even if he has no rules, he's tankier. The -1 damage is just like more on top of it. It's like people are complaining over nothing. Yeah. The only awkward thing is like, yeah, okay, now discussing resilient does nothing against 3 damage weapons, whereas in the past it would prevent 1 in 9. Like, okay, sure.
Yeah, so let me put it into another perspective. So that initial like 10 shots versus 6 shots thing that I talked about, you know, used to take 10
that wasn't the right math. It was 1 in 27.
Used to take 10 shots to take a wound off of an old Plague Marine. Now it takes 6 shots to take a wound off of a new Plague Marine using a 1 damage weapon. Well, now when you take into consideration that the new Plague Marines have 2 wounds, well, now it takes 12 shots to kill a Plague Marine versus the 10 shots versus the old Marine. So you get a net buff in tankiness, even though, like, you know, yeah, it's easier to wound you with a 1 damage weapon.
Yeah.
So
yeah. The other thing people are forgetting, it's like, yes, they are tankier, but it's like, yeah, the rule isn't as sexy necessarily, but they're just better across the board. Their new movement rules are good. Like they are a better unit.
Yep.
They have the better movement. They have the extra wounds.
Always rapid firing.
Always rapid firing. And Contagions of Nurgle. So you're just if you're just getting into melee or getting close enough, depending on the turn it is, everything is -1 toughness to you.
Yeah, and chat's asking if people would have like would like to have the old disgusting resilient, but having the models just cost way more points. Yeah, I know. I think that the models will be more expensive. Like 2 wound models just have to cost more, pretty much no matter what you do to them. Plague Marines are not excellent right now, so I don't think they have to go up a ton. But picking up a second wound and then picking up these new rules, they are going to have to go up. And we haven't seen the full codex yet. Like there will be stratagems and other things that can go on them. We don't know if the Plague Marine, Plague Grenade Bomb is still going to stick around, or if the Plague Knife Bomb is still going to be relevant.
Yeah, there has to be something to increase their damage output in some way, because there's like certain ratios where it's like, if you're like infinitely tanky but have 0 gun output, like what are you doing?
Yeah, well, keep in mind though, like with the new with what we do now, they wound Marines on 2s because they're gonna make other Marines toughness 3, and they're gonna keep Veterans of the Long War because that's just what Chaos Space Marines do. So like, if nothing else, they wound Marines on 2, and that's like a lot.
You don't even need veterans to do it if you're packing flails, because flails will put you at strength 6.
Sure.
The other thing that I like too is their weapon range at rapid fire is now effectively 30 because they have their 29. I say.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it'll be 29 because they're always rapid firing, which is pretty damn good range for always rapid firing. Granted, still AP 0, but
it's a start. It's a start.
It's a start, and it's better than what the old rule was, which is like always rapid firing at like 18 inches, so you get plus 6 inches on to as to what it was before.
Yeah. Keep in mind, like the stratagem they got was like your re-rolled wounds of 6 became AP 4, or like your wound rolls of 6 were AP 4. I forget what the stratagem was in the
rending one,
like that.
Right. There. What exactly was it? It's just like 6-ups were Ren 4.
Probably.
I want to say that that's correct.
There's like a non-zero chance they just get like a rule where it's like if your bolt gun re-rolls a wound into like a successful wound, you have like 2 AP, something like that to increase their depth. Like we don't know where their true damage output lies. There's a real chance, and it's almost guaranteed there's something hidden in their book to increase their damage output.
I mean, the other, like, before we dive into speculation too much, the other thing that is happening, and this is something that happens in any book, we like to focus on one rule. Whether it's like, this one rule is broken, or this one rule is really good, and this one rule is terrible. We don't necessarily take the entire codex into account. Like sometimes armies will have a really good rule, but the other rules are like, but this rule brings it up and it turns about even. But other times it's the disgustingly resilient may not seem as sexy. But Death Guards get so many other new toys. Like I don't care if they're like slightly less tanky. But Plague Marines, we now know, are more tanky too.
So before we move on from talking about Plague Marines, I just want to get your guys' idea on it. If I set the over under at 25.5 points, where are you guys taking, the over or the under on where these guys are gonna land?
You remind me where Plague Marines are at now?
They are currently at 18.
Okay.
Under.
And for keeping in mind, intercessors are 20, tacticals are 19.
Under. Pretty easily
under 25.
Like a heavy intercessor is 28, and they're still definitely worse than that.
They would actually have to have some kind of like insane rule that I described, like reroll your successful wound rolls into successful wounds are -4 in order for them to even come close to that. That would be a lot.
Okay, so you think we were thinking around like 22, 23 points?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think they're going to come down more than an intercessor, most likely. Their guns are worse than intercessors. Their melee is the same unless you get them plague knives, in which case it gets better. Because they all gain extra attack as well. But they're worse guns, but they're tankier and they're slower. Yeah, probably a little bit more expensive, but not a huge amount.
I'm going to call it 21. 21 or 22 a model.
Yeah, I'm expecting something in the ballpark of 22.
Do we want to bet on it?
I also think their point cost might be dependent on if they get to keep legion sizes. By the way,
if they can go to 20. I don't know. They might have to make them a little bit more expensive. They can go to 20 just to really charge you for the 20-man blocks, because a 20-man block of Plague Marines is going to be a miserable move. Can we talk about the unit that I'm actually more curious about in the Death Guard Codex, though?
What flavor of Terminator is it?
Yeah, right. Either or. Actually, I wasn't gonna nail myself down to a particular flavor of Terminators. You can pick one. I think that they're both really interesting right now. 3 wounds, toughness 5, 2 up, 5 up, or 2 at worst, maybe 2 up, 4 up. Space Marine Cataphractii Terminators went to 2 up, 5 up, but they're like, that's like both Cataphractii and Tartarus armor, because Space Marine Terminators just got kind of weirdly messed with. So they're either 2 up, 4 up, or 2 up, 5 up. They're probably 2 up, 5 up. I think 2 up, 4 up, -1 damage, 3 wounds is just
stupid.
a little too much. Like that's just probably a little bit too much to deal with, especially considering like we're gonna have the Plague Surgeon. He's gonna give them some sort of defensive ability. It might be just reanimating a guy. It might be a 6-up Feel No Pain. Like we don't know what he does yet. That unit is gonna be heinously tanky. Like just like all right, so like you need a 4 damage weapon to knock one out. And 4 damage is solidly in the category of like you have like 1 or 2 shots with that thing if it's a ranged weapon, and it's like a main battle cannon for a tank. And 4 damage weapons in melee pretty much is the sole purview of like White Scar's characters with Thunderhammers. So nothing's really wiping out large numbers of them. You just have to pound so many shots into that unit. Like you need 3 damage weapons, 2 shots each to kill one, or 1 damage weapon is like 3 damage each. And they come in 10-man squads, it's 30 wounds. It just seems insanely difficult to bring down. I suspect that their points costs are going to be really high, though.
I'm honestly excited for Death Shroud. I always liked them. It was fun to use them to like hit people after they defended Morty. But I'm curious to see how Blight Lords do.
Yeah, the old issue with Death Shroud is you used to put them on the table. Oh, so you put them down. Death Guard didn't really have any bonuses to charge, so you miss your charge, and then they kind of hobble after your opponent, and they eventually get picked off. So they'll still do that. They'll still like miss their charge, and they have to like kind of walk at your opponent. But now, like, if your opponent's like, all right, I'm going to kill those 5 guys walking at me, that's their turn. That unit is heinously tanky.
Yeah. For the record, if Blight Lords, do we know if they're 5-inch movement now?
We don't know anything.
I thought I saw there was like one of those like box set rules leaks where I thought
yeah, that data sheet is out there. But like keep in mind that multi-meltas are strength 3 with 5 shots. Like there were some mistakes in them.
So I mean, assuming that that's correct, then and they have 5-inch movement now. I would be more than happy to trade that for having a 5-up invul instead of the 4-up. I would trade that 1 point of invul for that extra inch of movement. Because as somebody who has used Blight Lords to both great effect and to 0 fucking effect whatsoever, missing that first charge against Eldar means that my Blight Lords aren't doing a goddamn thing the rest of the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, against average 6-inch movement infantry, if they just move their full movement away from you every turn, your average advance only gets you an inch closer to them. Like, an 8-inch charge is not that good either.
Yeah.
And against Eldar, you're just done.
Yeah, against Eldar, like, it was over. They just 7-inch move, and then they just advance, and they would just be like, oh, you move 4 inches, I will just be 9 inches away from you.
Yeah, or if it's like a screen or something that they don't care about, they can just like push it up in your face, and like you're not fast enough to go around it, so you have to go through it. Yeah, they can get really stuck, but which is why I think we have to look at the shooty ones. The shooty ones might be interesting.
I mean, the other thing we also have to think about is if these guys are going to be super hard to kill, they might just end up being objective holder. Like, run away from me, little Eldar. But running away from me means getting off your objective, which I'll just take.
Yeah, 5 of them on the objective will be pretty much impossible to move.
Like, I'm happy. Like, I'll drop them 9 inches away from an objective. I'll try and charge. I'll miss. You either have to focus your entire army on killing them, or you have to leave the objective to not get killed by them. Either way, it'll bring me closer to the objective. Like, I'll advance. I don't care. Because it's about holding objectives, not killing the other guy.
Yeah, and in that particular use case, like, I had been playing around with the idea of just like Assault Centurions, aren't what they used to be. So I was thinking, well, what if I don't try to use them like to just kill things? What if I just load them up in a Land Raider Crusader and use my White Scars rules to like double move the Crusader and then just use a stratagem to just disembark them real quick and then just plop them down like smack dab in the middle of the board. And then like, yeah, I can't charge you because I did the lightning debarkation, but what are you going to do? Charge me? With with a bunch of flamer assault centurions? I don't think that's going to happen. But the thing that really puts the kibosh on that is they don't really have anything to mitigate incoming damage aside from maybe an apothecary with a 6-up Feel No Pain, which in and of itself isn't that great. It's better than nothing, but you only get like a plus 30% increase in effective wounds. Whereas you do that with what's probably going to be a similarly costed, if not cheaper, unit of Blight Lords or even just Death Shroud. They teleport in, and now they're mitigating all sorts of damage. They're and I don't know. I just think for that particular playstyle, it'd be a lot better. And also, I don't have to spend 250 points on a Land Raider.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. I guess for me, we're thinking about it from Death Guard. Like Death Guard's whole shtick is come and kill me, have fun trying to kill me. They're similar to Custodes in that regard. And when I've run my Custodes, I'll do a blob of bikes to go around and get the backfield objectives, and then I'll run my Terminators up to the middle of the board and be like, have fun dealing with these guys.
My one concern for Death Guard is that they might be approaching Custodes levels of points per wound, where they might just need something specifically against mortal wounds, because that's their whole thing was just disgustingly resilient. Was just like, oh yeah, there you go. Like if your opponent's trying to smite you off the table, you just have disgustingly resilient, and you're about like points per wound. You're actually like you're less points per wound than a Space Marine, but the new rule doesn't work against smite.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Which is a little scary for them. They need something.
But there's not a lot of smite going around right now.
Right now, but with all
Thousand Suns Codex is coming
Thousand Suns
soon,
Codex is coming soon, and with all of this -1 damage shenanigans, that's like GW is just sprinkling out like candy. I know I've personally been tinkering with the idea of bringing back some form of smite spam. Just trying to just peel through that, because you know what also works really well at killing off like a blob of Blade Guard veterans? Mortal Wounds.
Yeah, yes.
Mortal Wounds are really well situated in the current meta.
But smite spams aren't what they used to be either. Like when I was running Thousand Suns, I have 1 million Psychers and I just keep casting smite on 5. And it wouldn't matter. But that's not the case anymore. And I'd also have 1 million characters, and that's not the case anymore.
You can't depend on Mortal Wounds as your sole damage output like you can back in 8th edition. Like when I was playing a Captain Con, like that was like almost like literally my entire damage output was just Mortal Wounds. You can't do that.
Did you get like 29 in one turn?
I got like I got close to like 20 Mortal Wounds in one Psychic phase.
I mean, like look at the list I presented for our last episode, where I was on like Magnus, three other Thousand Sun Psychers, and then a big blob of Flamers, and then also Demon Psychers. Like that list was only casting Smite 2 times a turn, but it had I think 7 damaging psychic powers pointing at the enemy every turn. Every single one of those powers had a bonus of at least +1 to be cast, rerolling ones to cast. And then the Flamers also threw 5 mortal wounds a turn. Like there are lists out there that can just throw huge numbers of mortal wounds.
Yeah, but those lists have weaknesses too. It's not
every list has downsides. You can't just poo-poo every single list.
You can't just like every list has weaknesses. Like people like TJ Lanigan just like won a GT with a very similar list where he was just like actually smote all of his opponents off the table. Like there are Smite lists doing very well right now. They do exist, and I'm a little concerned that Death Guard, which used to have a like not an excellent matchup, but like a fine matchup, just kind of lost everything into that matchup. They could be in a little bit more trouble now.
Yeah.
Getting the extra wounds will be good. Like that might be enough, but they are going to be more expensive. They are going to be more points per wound than Space Marines, which is always a little bit of a suspect place to be.
Well, it's interesting because let's say they go to 22 points. Let's go real crazy. Let's say 24 points. Okay, let's say worst possible case. So that's 12 points per wound. And their used to be 18. That would mean they're still as efficient against mortal wounds as they used to be per point.
That's fair.
And we're guessing mating 22, so they're actually probably going to be better. Let's not forget that. But like double wounds is double as tough against smite. I know that because I think about the amount of times I've been smiting Marines, and it's just like, oh, that just doesn't do what I remember it doing. I remember 3 Marines getting picked off the table. Now a Marine gets picked off and like another guy just has a wound next to him, that's a lot less.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I guess you're right. They're not actually gonna get that much worse, or rather, they might get better.
I mean, we'll see what happens. It's going to be we still don't know what the book is. We don't know what their anti-psyker situation is because Death Guard does hate psychers.
They hate psychers, even though Mortarion is a super fucking psycher.
An okay psycher. He's like a double caster with no bonuses, whatever.
Yeah, if you read Dark Imperium, Mortarion throws a whole hissy fit about it. Like, I am not a psyker. I do numerology, and it is hilarious.
It's like the whole thing about Space Wolf rune priests not being psychers; they just call upon the spirits of Fenris.
Well, it's because I mean, in the lore, they take a pretty big. There's a difference between a psyker and a sorcerer, and that's the line that a lot of people, Space Marines included, draw. Whereas, like, the Space Wolves are pretty cool with the Wolf Priests. Like, yeah, they use the warp, and they are aware they use the warp. They're not trying to say they don't use the warp. They're saying that they're not sorcerers, which is like, when you think about it too hard and you start like using, I don't know, mnemonics to make your powers work, now you're a sorcerer.
Mnemonics.
Like, if you've read 1,000 Suns book, like, that's
I know. Man. They're all about their incantations and their rituals. Yeah. I just hadn't heard it reduced down to mnemonics before.
I mean, like, that's what they are. I mean, they're all just like, yeah, like you walk your mind through the 18th pattern, and then your opponent's brain explodes, and the Space Wolves are like, hey, no. You just hate them hard enough in your mind and their brain explodes. That's okay. But like, once you start doing math, well, now you're a sorcerer, and that's not okay.
All right, fair enough.
Listen, Space Wolves versus Thousand Suns is the epitome of nerd versus jock.
Indeed. Oh.
Like, that's all it is.
Yes, it is. And Magnus did nothing wrong.
No, Magnus was irresponsible. Magnus is basically like Elon Musk. Smart but shitty. Or maybe Zuckerberg. Smart but very shitty and irresponsible. I'm gonna go with Magnus blows.
All right.
Magnus did nothing wrong. It's unfortunate.
No,
Magnus is incapable of knowing this.
Magnus is a fuck up.
Magnus did nothing wrong.
Guys, I have an Ultramarines banner in my room. Magnus is a fuck up.
I mean, yeah, well,
Magnus did nothing wrong. Omar was
mistakes.
Magnus did nothing wrong. Omar was wrong in trying to inject Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg into our plastic soldier discussion.
Fair. Yeah, no, you're right. I was wrong. I'll give you that one. Magnus.
Oh, we were so.
So, speaking about doing nothing wrong, you can do nothing wrong for the podcast by we're looking for some questions and feedback for the next episode, with the topic being like listener Q&A. Correct, Chris?
Yeah, just listener Q&A. If you have a question about that, you just want answered, ranging from anything from what do you think about this meta thing, or what do you think this rules interaction works, because GW hasn't been bothered to write an FAQ about it, or even just what's your stance on pineapple on pizza. Whatever you got. Stream chat, Twitter, YouTube comments, Discord. We're all there's a bunch of things that you can submit your questions on, and we will answer them to the best of our ability and comfort.
Or discomfort.
Depending. I'll answer anything. I'm an open book.
Yeah, Omar is an open book, like, this comfortably, so.
Yeah, careful what you ask him. We might have to shut off his mic.
Yeah. I remember, like, we went to New York together, and I can't quite remember what we were talking about, like, on the 4-hour drive down there, but I remember kind of, like, regretting asking him to go to New York with me.
No, you didn't even ask me. You were literally like, we're going to New York. I was like, okay.
Yep.
And you had no way of saying no. It was impossible.
I mean, it wasn't about saying no. Chris was just like, we're going to New York. I'm like, fuck it. I got nothing to do.
Yeah, no, he had just gotten out of class, and I pulled up in my car. I was like, "Get in, loser! We're going to New York."
Yeah, it was a fun trip though.
Yeah, it was.
We got cupcakes out of an ATM. I think that was pretty cool.
Yep, just two bros taking a 4-hour road trip to get cupcakes.
Bros, yeah, that's what we are.
All right. So I think that just about wraps up this week's episode. I think we've sufficiently run out of steam on this one.
Yeah.
So
Talking about road trips to New York.
So thank you everybody for listening to this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to thank our contributors for this episode: Kevin Lieb, Benjamin Rubenstein, Omar Q. This has been the 3D6 Charge podcast. Bye for now. Don't roll any ones, and I will leave you with these words of wisdom from Kevin Lieb.
Ring the bell, smash the like button. Do it. Do it.
Magnus did nothing wrong.